I think it is shocking, and no one in the mainstream media will say this is shocking. You're not allowed to. Two very significant new pieces of data today which reflect the massive discontent in UK politics. You won't hear the MSM tackle the genuine fears of demographic change in this country, but I will in this independent space. And I understand the growing discontent at news that for the first time ever, Muhaammed is now the most popular name for baby boys in the UK, overtaking Noah. It's no coincidence that intense fears about the changing face of the UK, which has been altered beyond recognition by mass immigration against our express will, is causing a political earthquake. A just released poll confirms a sea change is happening. Look at that, the headline. Reform UK overtaking Labour for the first time. It is also Labour's lowest percentage since October 2019 and their first time in third place since July 2019. Reform UK chairman Zia Youssef posted on X, Reform now polling ahead of Labour. Reform has all the momentum in British politics. But it's no wonder, given this is how the public feels about how Starmer is treating our border. Truth in that, right? So what's a failing Prime Minister to do? A dodgy reset, of course.
After all, in the last 14 years, they tightened their belts when they were told, we're all in it together. They closed ranks to the deadly virus, and they never once wavered in their commitment to stand with Ukraine.
From what I'm aware, we never consented to the complete smashing of our economy for totally unnecessary COVID lockdowns and a totally unnecessary war in Ukraine. Zip it on that front. But today, Starmer kept talking about his missions. But as far as I'm concerned, this is mission impossible because he didn't even bother to include stopping the boats or reducing immigration.
Not changing the conversation, not walking away, or talking down to them. And that's not just about immigration. But, as ever, that shows the argument. Take these statistics that were published last week, which revealed with total clarity how the Tories lost control of immigration, opened the borders deliberately to cover up the extent of their economic stagnation. Zero regard for the damage to trust in politics. Absolutely unforgivable.
Well, it's all well and good slamming the Tories for this mess, but what are you going to do about it, mate? Even the mainstream media has had enough of his diversionary tactics.
I don't want to give you the whole story about my parents all over again. But no matter how tough life was growing up, they always believed that if they worked hard, Britain would be better for their children.
Over to you, Beth.
Beth, please.
Thank you.
Beth Rigby.
Sorry. Yeah, I've got stuck. I got stuck, I'm up. Prime Minister Beth Rigby, Sky News. I want to follow up on Chris's question because I'm a bit confused. You say migration in this country under the Tories is unforgivable. You said borders are one of your top two priorities. You put in small boats into your mission promises before the election, adding it to your 5 missions, and yet on the banners behind you, there's nothing there. In the 6 milestones of measurement, there's nothing there. So you have not given the public one metric on which to measure you when it comes to migration. Is that because you fear failure, or is it because you said it was a priority to win, but actually it's not even in your top 6? Thank you.
No, Beth, the way we've constructed it is that there are foundational things that a government must do. And they...
GB News got short shrift too.
your plan is to reduce net migration and reduce overall small boat crossings. GB News viewers will be saying simply, is that it, Prime Minister? Why can't you stop the boats and cut net migration to under 100,000? Is it because you can't or you don't want to? And just very quickly, can you afford all this with no more big tax rises?
Look, Chris, we are going to drive down migration, both legal and illegal. That will only be done with a serious plan.
It's pathetic. There is no serious plan. No plan. Just more open borders. As the surging Reform UK leader Nigel Farage put it, Keir Starmer's milestones for government don't include immigration or the exploding population. This reset offers no change and guarantees economic failure. Indeed, the promise to decarbonise our electricity grid by 2030 will do just that. So Starmer is doomed. But so is Britain if we continue on this path. Now, the uncancelled interview. Delighted to welcome to Outspoken for the first time today, Peter Mcilvenna, host of the brilliant Hearts of Oak podcast, which I was delighted to appear on. I think it was last week, wasn't it, Peter? But goodness me, so much has happened since then. So brilliant to have you on the show. What do you make of this seemingly bombshell poll showing Reform UK leading the governing Labour Party?
Well, Dan, it was great to have you last week, and I think we put out the interview on Monday, and it was great to delve into your background and your understanding assessment of what is happening. Of course, people get that Monday to Friday with you directly on your channel, and it's exciting. I mean, Nigel has done a phenomenal effort, and he's not perfect, and Reform UK are not perfect, but they have upended UK politics like probably few others, and we have an electoral system that doesn't allow such upstarts to come and actually change the system, to change the conversation, to upend the electoral system. And Nigel has done that on a first past the post system. So huge credit to him. And of course, we saw in the election just months ago that although they got, 15%, 15%, that they got 5 MPs, a horrendous return for that popular vote. And yet Nigel has brushed past that, and he has surged in popularity. The party has surged in popularity. And part of that is because of Nigel's charisma. And part of it is because no one seems to have an answer to the issue of immigration. And it is immigration and the economy. That's what affects across Europe. That's what got President Trump back into the White House. Those are the issues that affect people. The economy is what affects people's pockets day to day, whether they can make ends meet at the end of the month. And it is mass immigration and changes of their society, changes their culture, changes of their community, and whether they can get their kids into school, whether they can get into the GP surgery, whether that is what it means, mass immigration. And Labour tell us they're going to change it. And I also watched Keir Starmer's presentation. I didn't hear anything from it. And the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch, she may be wonderful, and I've always liked her in the past. I've respected her. I've loved her engagement on the cultural issues, especially on the gender debate. And she is strong. She is passionate. She has convictions, and she comes from a Christian background, and I love that. And yet we have to see whether she is able to take the Conservative Party that had been kicked in the teeth, and rightly so, at the last general election for utterly failing the British population on every single issue in the last 14 years, whether she can take that and whether she can make the Conservative Party conservative again. At the moment, it's Nigel Farage that are making a Conservative Party conservative, and that is Reform UK.
Indeed. And look, I'm sorry, I was prepared to give Kemi Badenoch a chance. I don't think she was the right choice for the Conservative Party. I made it quite clear that I thought Robert Jenrick was the person who had the hope of turning it around. But she has been appalling since getting the job. And she's surrounding herself by the same establishment Westminster figures. It's not going to work. Just want to show you this post that's just gone up now from Isabel Oakeshott, who writes, for years, Nigel Farage and Richard Tice were mocked and dismissed by the entire establishment. Reform UK had no money and barely any paid staff. A handful of true believers kept going. Now look. And she's right, isn't she, to point that out?
She is, and I'm not a massive Isabel Oakeshott fan. And I'm not a massive... I don't, what she's put out, I think it's having 2 feet in the mainstream and balancing that up and juggling that up.
Because of course, for people who don't know, she is, as well as being a very successful journalist herself, she is the partner of Richard Tice, the deputy leader.
She is, and I think Richard Tice, and I've never met Richard Tice at all, and he may be principled, but he is not a leader, and that's the reason, obviously, why Nigel stepped back in again to take the party, because Nigel is this charismatic leader that is known not only in the UK, but worldwide, and of course, his connections with President Trump. So Nigel is the perfect person to lead this, and I don't know what... Richard Tice brings, and I don't know him, so I can say that with no criticism of him personally at all. But I don't see him looking at the political parties, looking at those leadership candidates, looking at our political system, and to me, being homeless after UKIP got Brexit and wondered where do we go to from here, and looking at Richard Tyson, he has never inspired me with confidence and enthusiasm. Nigel, of course, has stepped back into the mix, and although I may have question marks on some things that Nigel does, I do think he understands the immigration issue more than anyone else, and that is the key. It was one of the key issues in the Brexit debate, and it is one of the key issues today, and no one seems to care. Not the Tories, not the Conservatives, and whether Kemi Badenoch was part of that or not, I don't know, but no one in the last 14 years has got it in the Conservative Party, and that's why when I see Kemi or other Conservative across a dispatch box telling us actually how immigration will be fixed. Seriously, you don't get it. You've destroyed this country on mass immigration, and you now say in opposition, you're going to fix it, you're going to make it better. And that's why you look at Keir Starmer getting in, not because of Labour's popularity or not because of Labour's ability to put forward an agenda for the country, but because the Conservatives failing. That's why they got in, because the Conservatives have failed. Therefore, people think I need to vote for someone else. And Reform wasn't in the position for people to take votes. Therefore, people said, well, I'll go back to Red. I mean, that red wall that was broken, I'll go back to Labour. That's how my family voted. What can be worse than the Conservatives under 14 years? And that is a difficult question to push back. I wish I had an answer to that, but I don't know if there is an answer to that, because I don't know how worse Labour can be in terms of mass immigration to the Conservative Party.
And look, no solution is going to be perfect here. And I always say, I'm a critical friend to Reform UK. We'll get into this a bit more shortly, but of course there are certain things that Richard Tice has said. For example, I disagree with describing Tommy Robinson supporters as that lot, but I do think it's important that there is some unity on the right, because otherwise this, S-word show is going to continue. I try and be as polite as possible, Peter, but you know what I'm saying. I want to talk about this shocking chart, though. And I think it is shocking. And no one in the mainstream media will say this is shocking. You're not allowed to. But let's just look at it. Top 10 boys' names in England and Wales last year. These are official stats, Peter. It's from ONS. Number 10, Henry. 9, Oscar. 8, Theodore. 7, Lucas. 6, Arthur. 5, Leo. 4, George. 3, Oliver. 2, Noah. But number 1 for the first time, even though it has been in the top 10 since 2016, Muhaammed. Your reaction? But first, you know how I often talk about the need for free speech to be protected. But I've been increasingly thinking of the need for personal protection online from snoopers, bad actors, and hackers. I'm delighted to tell you I've now found the fail-safe solution. But what's more, this VPN, or virtual private network to use the full term, is also a life changer when it comes to providing you entertainment and information from anywhere in the world, wherever you are. Let me introduce you to Surfshark, an incredible and easy-to-use service that encrypts all your internet traffic, meaning your online activities stays safe so you can shop, stream, browse, and conduct your banking online in complete privacy. But the benefits of Surfshark go way beyond keeping you safe online. So this is what's amazing about a VPN. It allows you access to your favorite entertainment and news shows and channels from anywhere in the world, wherever you are, including, by the way, to all the big streaming services like Hulu and iPlayer and HBO Max and Peacock and Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney Plus, which may not be available in your particular area, but within seconds, you can be watching as if you're in another country. It's truly amazing for sport as well, because if you're traveling for work or on holiday, you can watch all of your favorite content from home without worrying about the geo blocks. This is also an insurance policy against creeping censorship in many countries like France, where Rumble has been banned for many months now. So this is all about watching anything, anytime, anywhere. It is true freedom. A VPN can save money too, because think, when you are shopping online, you can get the best deals from anywhere in the world, because some websites change their prices depending on where you are surfing from. There are other benefits of Surfshark too. It works for your whole family because you can have unlimited devices. So an entire household can stay safe with just one subscription. And there are over 3,200 servers in over 100 countries, meaning there's a world of choice at your fingertips. The other great thing, and I know many of you, this is the first time that you may have thought about using a VPN, and you really must get one, but it has 24/7 customer service. So you can go to surfshark.com/outspoken for an extra 4 months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price. What's more, Surfshark are so confident they're the best VPN in the world that you can give it a try for a full 30 days. And if you're not entirely satisfied, you will get your money back. So go to surfshark.com/outspoken for an extra 4 months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price, or you can just click in the link in the description box below. But now, back to the show.
Well, this is one of the concerns I have on reform, that they're not willing to engage on this culture clash that we face. And immigration, if it's coming from a nation, which we have seen across the decades, we have seen immigrants coming over and integrating in society, and that's what you want. You want people who will become British, who will become part of society, and who will have all the values that we have as British citizens. And we've had that up to now. And it was Trevor Phillips, I think, who brought this up in stark contrast. I think it was maybe 15, 14 years, a Channel 4 interview talking about Muslims being British. And he said there's something different about Islam, that there is an integration issue that Islam have in the West. And he said this was something that he had not seen before in the Windrush generation, in those coming from the sub-Asian continent across from India. We have seen integration by and large, and yet it is not coming from the Islamic world. And I think that is a fair conversation. It is a fair criticism, and it's a fair conversation point. And I don't think we have had that in our society. And I think if Muhammad had been the number one name, and previous years, it has been the number one name whenever the 14 spellings of Muhammad are put together, but it's the one spelling that's number one. And I think we have a right to ask, Dan, you have a right to ask on your media profile whether this is positive or negative. And you cannot be criticized for asking that question. Let's put it on the table. Let's say whether Islam having a greater prominence in the West, is that good or bad? And if all the things that Islam brings in terms of culture, in terms not only of religion, but in terms of food, halal, in terms of finance, Sharia finance, in terms of how women are treated, in terms of how non-Muslims are treated, let's have a conversation about this. And that is not wrong to debate whether a change in society is good or bad. It's a normal part of society, of culture. And I think for the last 14 years, we have not been able to have this conversation. And of course, the term Islamophobia has shut down this debate. And it's not an angry debate. It's simply, what does it mean to be British? What does it mean to have the values in our nation? What are the values that we have? When our politicians talk about British values, what are those values? And cultures, societies, religious groups that have come in from all over the world have generally picked up those values that we have in Britain, and have honoured those, and they have become their values. With Islam, I think we are seeing something different, and I would just love to have a conversation about that, whether that's positive or negative for the UK.
Yeah, the thing is that if you even raise the issue of Islam in any way, you're immediately described as a bigot. I mean, when I posted on X the fact that I was going to be talking about Muhammad overtaking Noah, immediately someone came through and described me as a bigot. And it's very interesting. I mean, look at the BBC and how they decided to illustrate the picture. And I think even those decisions are very, very interesting, aren't they? But I will talk about this issue, and I will talk about it because I know what is going on. So I had Sahel Ahmed on the show recently. Now, this is a young man who was British born. He happens to be gay, which is one of the reasons that he broke free of extreme Islam. But he was planning a lone wolf terror attack on Canary Wharf for a long time. And he's very clear about the fact that what is going on in the mosques in East London is radicalization, is talk that gay men should be thrown off the top of buildings in the UK. That's before you get to the issue of women's rights. So I think we do have a right to talk about it, and there has to be a way where the discussion can be had without immediately being described as Islamophobic.
I agree, and I would love to have Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, actually leading a Pride Festival in Gaza. I would love for that to be the case and see what happens. And then let's have a grown-up conversation about how human beings are treated that have a different view from the particular culture, and whether they are treated with fairness and where they're treated rightly. And Dan, I've always appreciated how you engage on these issues, I think in a similar way to Calvin, in a very gentle way, in a very non-confrontational way, in a way that let's just have a grown-up conversation about these. And you mentioned Tommy Robinson, and Tommy certainly has passion, and that passion can maybe sometimes be seen as aggression, and I don't think that is necessarily the case. But you and Calvin have got a very different approach, and I think I like that approach. And I think your approach is a way to have this conversation, not with anger or aggression or forcefulness, but simply looking at the facts and having a rational conversation about whether this is good or not. Because I know from the Conservative government, and I know from this Labour government, we haven't seen any conversation about how women are treated in Islam. Yeah. Zero conversation about that. And when you see women covered head to foot, is that a choice? Actually, no, it's not a choice. They come from a patriarchal society where they have very little say. Whenever Muslim men can marry 4 wives, whenever in many Islamic countries, there's no age restriction for how young the bride can be. This is not right. We do not accept that treatment of children or women in the West. And let's have a conversation about it. I mean, in my local train station, there was a big sign to say, looking at a woman sexually is not right. And there was another sign about touching a woman sexually is not right. If you see this happen, please phone this number. How have we come to the point where you need to put a sign up to say, if you sexually assault a woman, that is wrong? I learned that from growing up. Dana, you learned that from growing up. There is a culture issue of people who grew up in certain cultures treat women in a different way. And we need to reset how we see women's place in society. And we need to understand how we bring in education to treat people, because if we have people growing up who are no longer learning that in the home, then they need to learn it some way, or else we're going to be in serious trouble in terms of women and their rights in this country.
And of course, the complete irony is that it's the hard left and the woke-topians who are meant to care most about women's rights and the LGBT community, as they call it, though I hate calling it that, but then will not stand up against extreme Islam, which literally treat those two groups of people with complete disdain. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.